Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Marc Sewtz. I'm Director of Software Development for Oracle Apex. Today, I would like to talk about Apex 22.1, which is our new release, which will be coming out soon. This is the first part of a series of 5 office hours on Apex 22.1. We have lots of exciting new features to show you. So we broke it down into 5 separate sessions. Today, I'm going to give you a general overview, going through some of the bigger new features, and then we're going to have subsequent sessions with in-depth walkthroughs. Second here. Right, first off, apexoracle.com, our public evaluation instance, has been upgraded to Apex 22.1 already. That happened yesterday. So if you have a workspace on apexoracle.com, you can go there now and try out 22.1. If you don't have a workspace, you can also go there and request a new workspace. So let me quickly go there. This is apexoracle.com. You go to the sign in button over here. And if you don't have a workspace, click here and request a new workspace. If you do have a workspace, you can just sign in and start trying out Apex 22.1. This is a pre-release. So down here in the right-hand corner, you see 22.1-16. So we always upgrade apexoracle.com a few weeks ahead of our on-premise release. For us to try it out, for you guys to get to know the new features, and also to see if there are any last-minute issues that we need to tackle. You can read up on all the new features in Apex 22.1, also on apexoracle.com. So going back here, there's a link, see what's new. And in here you get a list of all the major new features, starting with the approvals component, simplified page creation, and so on. And this page includes a number of videos, and we'll add additional videos over time. So if you want to have short, couple of minute long videos, video demonstrations on these new features, please go to this page. All right. Now we do these office hours typically once a month. This series, of course, is going to be every week. But in general, it's about once a month. And we have the recordings of previous office hours available at apexoracle.com/office hours. I list the previous 3 office hours here, but the list goes back all the way to 2018. So you can go way back and look at previous demonstrations and office hours. The next office hour is going to be next week on the 21st. That's part 2 of our series. And next week, we're going to show you the approvals component in more detail, the new data generator, faceted search enhancements, and tokenized search. Nanya, Carlos, and Alexis are going to do the demos and presentations next week. Then a week after that, on April 22nd, we're going to talk about some new and improved components, including the new sort by order page item, changes to the markdown and rich text editors. We're going to show how we can more easily install starter and sample applications. And we're going to talk about changes to REST-enabled SQL. Stefan, Carsten, and Daniel are going to give those demos. Then on May 5th, we're going to talk about PWA, progressive web apps, and mobile, as well as UI and changes to the universal theme. Christian Rockiter, Vincent, and Tim are going to talk about that. And then the last session in the series is going to be on May 12th, with changes to the developer experience, showing you the new create page wizard, enhancements to file URLs, subscription for lists, code data enhancements, and support for workspace static files to be included in your component export, as well as the readable export of your application in JSON and YAML format. Patrick, Stefan, and Shihari are going to talk about that. But so I mentioned a lot of names, and you may have noticed some of these newer team members that joined us over the last year or 2. So I wanted to show you a list of our growing Apex team, or map, to be precise. So this is all the places around the world where we now have team members working on Apex. We've been growing quite a bit over the last 2 years. I think it's probably plus 35 by now. So lots of new team members, and we're still growing. So if you're interested in talking about openings on our team, please reach out. And then it's time to meet again in person, hopefully. There are a number of conferences coming up, and we all look forward to meeting you guys there. A number of Apex team members are going to be presenting in person at these upcoming conferences, starting with Apex Alpha Adria next week, next Friday. I included all the links to the conferences, so if you're anywhere close to these, please join us, please sign up, and please talk to us in person again. Again, next week, Apex Alpha Adria. Then in early May, we have Apex Connect in Germany. And then on May 10th, it's the Great Lakes Oracle Conference. And they had an Apex Day for many years. And this year, they renamed it to the Joel Carmen Apex Day in memory of Joel. Then in late May, we're going to have Apex World in the Netherlands. And then in June, Kscope in Texas. So again, a number of our Apex team members are going to be at these conferences. Great opportunity to meet in person and talk about Apex. Then before I start with Apex 20, oops, sorry, that's clearly wrong. Let me do a live fix here. All right, so Apex 21.2 PSE. Before I start talking about 22.1, there's a PSE for 21.2, and that's available now. Came out last on April 11th. That's the 6th PSE. We always release PSEs more or less once a month, and they're always kind of built on each other. So if you have patch 3 installed, you can just go ahead and install patch 6. It just kind of updates all the previous bug fixes as well. Or if you never installed a PSE before on 21.2, you can just go straight to version 6. Go to OTN or download page to read up on details regarding the CDN based on the patch you have installed. And if you're using static resources on the CDN, you may have to update your CDN settings. All right, now let's talk about 22.1. So I want to kind of give you an overview of the high-level new features, including a few demos of some of the features we included. Starting with some new functionality. So the number of new features built in, new functionality that have been there before. Starting with the approvals component and the unified task list. This is part of a broader effort to build in workflow into Apex. This is going to be a multi-release, multi-cycle effort. And the first piece of this is in Apex 22.1. It's the approval component and unified task list. With this feature, you can manage the progress of human tasks in your applications. There's a new shared component where you define your tasks. There's also a unified task list that you can create with the Create Page wizard. And there are new page processes to process your task. We're going to include a new sample approvals application as part of our suite of sample apps that you can use to learn more about how this all works and how it all works together. And I want to do a quick demo to show you this app. I'm going to that workspace on apexoracle.com that I logged in earlier. I'm going to log in again. All right, let's see. That's better. All right. So there's the sample approvals sample application. It looks like this. I made it dark because I was told dark theme is better. And, so in this application, you can try out the new approvals component. There's a very detailed write-up that talks about all the pieces that make up this component. What's the task definition? What do we mean by unified task list? What's the task details page? And how you do your process your approvals? And to give you just a little bit of a impression on how that works, we have a list of employees here, our good old emp table. And what I can do here is change the salary and change jobs. So let's say I want to change the salary of Blake, give him a little bit of a raise. And then maybe I also want to change the job of Ford to, let's say, become an analyst. Right, so I submitted 2 tasks and I did that as Marc, right? I'm logged in as Marc here right now, but I'm just a regular user. I don't really have approval privileges. So if I want to actually action these tasks, I need to be a different user. There's a number of approvals pending, and I can look at them, but I can't action them. And this one, whoops, let's close this. This one, the salary change has been assigned to Jane, and the salary change for Blake, unassigned. And then there's also the job change assigned, unassigned, but either both Jane or Steve can make these changes. So let me log out and log me back in as Jane. And now I can look at my approvals, and approvals are waiting for me. And there's a whole list that I can either claim or approve. So let's go with the salary change. Approve this one. I can also look at the salary change and kind of look at the salary history. I can claim this task, and I can approve this task. All right, so that's the general flow. You can, pretty much everybody can submit tasks, but then only certain users can approve and assign these tasks. And you get a lot more detailed demonstration of this in a week. But let me briefly show you what's under the hood, the magic sauce here. So this is the sample approvals application. I mentioned there's a new shared component called task definitions. And in here, we define the job change and the salary task. So looking at a job change, you'll see things like the name and a static ID, and then a subject that shows up in your UI, job change for ename from job to job. So there are a few substitution strings in here. And these substitution strings get populated either from this query that loads up the init cap ename and the job, or and by the page item p new job that you set to the new job, and that is defined down here. Then there's the list of participants. Those are the owners and administrators who can action these tasks. And then down here at the very end, you see the actual action definitions. So on approve, there's an execute code action that is updating the job to the new job. And then there are a few additional actions. There's a notify employee, so there's an email being sent out, and there's also a push email queue, for example. So a number of task definition and steps in this list here, and then same for salary change. You have all these attributes, and then down here, the update statement to increase salary. And then when you look at the actual page where I made my changes, task details, for example, there are some new processes. For example, the approval. There are 2 new types, human task approve and human task create, that actually action these tasks and approvals. So just to give you a little bit of a impression on what this feature looks like, a lot more detailed demo is to come next week. And the sample application is going to be available in our gallery. Right, next up, we have flows for Apex. This is not part of Apex itself, but it kind of goes with our workflow effort. Flows for Apex is an open source solution distributed and managed by the MTAG. We've been contributing to this project. One of the main developers, Richard Allen, is part of our team. And this is a workflow solution that allows you to do BPMN 2.0 style workflow definitions in a graphical way, and built-in workflow into your applications. So definitely check this out as well. We are working on closely integrating our efforts and having workflows tasks from this feed into our unified task list and have other integrations. All right, we've already covered that. Then MySQL Support, in Apex 22.1, we are going to introduce support for MySQL. And just to clarify that upfront, it doesn't mean that you're going to install Apex into MySQL databases. What this is, it allows you to build Apex applications on data stored in MySQL databases. This makes use of the REST-enabled SQL feature of ORDS. So you'll be able to, for the time being at least, to have all your read-only components like report charts, calendars, and faceted search work on data stored in MySQL databases. There's more on this coming soon. We're going to have dedicated office hours that talks more about this in the future. SQL CL, export and import. SQL CL has been around for a long time, but we are standardizing on SQL CL for your application exports and imports, as well as in the future installing Apex. And what that means is that, for example, our Apex export Java utility is going to be deprecated, and we recommend using SQL CL for your application exports and imports and installs. SQL CL is similar to SQL+. It's a command line tool, Java-based. You can install it for free, and you can use it to automate your Apex deployments, your CI/CD pipelines, your Apex exports and imports, or to just kind of run it on the command line manually. Then there's a new data generator. The data generator allows you to generate data, generate sample data. So if you're building an application and you want to actually test your application at scale with some data that's really reflective of what you actually want to store on these tables, you can use this feature to generate hundreds and thousands of rows of data and test your applications. And I want to show you what that looks like here. For that, I'm going to go to SQL Workshop and going to go to QuickSQL. QuickSQL, of course, has been around for a long time. What QuickSQL allows you to do is to do things like I want to have a customers table, and maybe I have a company name, and so on. And as I'm typing this, on the right-hand side, you'll see how a DDL script is being generated. Just to take a little bit of a shortcut here, moving all of this out of the way, I prepared a little bit of a definition. There you go. So there's a more fully defined customers table with company name, first name, last name, email, phone, address, and so on. So I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to review and run this. And what that's doing, it's creating a new customers table for me, but I'm not creating any data in there just yet. So this is an empty table. But I do want to build an application on this empty table. So I'm going to go to create applications, create app, go into the create application wizard, name this customers, going to have an interactive report with form, just going to go ahead and create the application. All right, so what I've done so far, I created a table and I created an application on top of this table. And when I'm running this, you'll see an empty interactive report with no data in there just yet. So now I want to use the new data generator to actually populate this table with some real meaningful data. So going back to the builder, going to SQL Workshop, utilities, data generator, I can now use this wizard to create what we call a blueprint. A blueprint is a definition of a data generation definition that allows you to create tables, allows you to build blueprints, generate data on existing tables, or start from scratch, or import previous blueprints via JSON. If you're starting from scratch, then you kind of get a little bit of an example for how you do this, right? There's an employees table that we can just put in there for you to kind of learn about how to use this. For example, if you want to have first names, then we have what we call built-ins as a data source. There are a lot of different built-ins defined. And the built-in is a list of data in a particular category. So a list of random first names, a list of random company names, and so on, right? So you can just tap into the sample data and use that to generate real looking data, same as last name and so on. You can also define formulas, like for email, for example, we have this formula, first name, last name at company, based on this first and last name. So you can create emails that look pretty real. You can also have dates that are in the past, random dates in the past. You can also tap into a static list of values, right? If you have like skills, for example, you can define them in this list, or you can tap into SQL queries and query up data from either your database or just do a static SQL query here. All right, so if I want to use that for my customers table, I'm going to create a new blueprint from an existing table. Customers is a table that I just created. I'm going to call this customers. Create blueprint. There you go. And now when you look at it, for example, there's a built-in for, well, in this case, it's just Latin text. So let me see if I can find this company name, common name, company name. Let's go with this. First name, I was smart enough to actually pick up first name as a built-in data source. Last name, email, I could put in like a formula like I had in the previous example. So changing this to formula. And there's my formula. Phone is built-in for phone numbers, address, random text, zip codes, cities, some real countries. And that looks good to me. So let's do a preview. And this is what that would look like. So that looks like pretty real data to me. All right, let's just set this to generate, say, 5,000 rows. I'm going to save this, generate data. And off we go. Whoops, nope. You have the option to generate your data as a file, which is what's happening now in JSON format with CSV or SQL inserts, or you can actually insert it into your table. Let's try this again. So now I'm actually inserting those 5,000 rows into the customer table that I just created via quick SQL. And of course, now I'm having an issue here. Let's see if anything made it in. It did. All right, let's ignore that issue. It worked somewhat, and I generated data into my customers table. So here's the application that I created before, and now has some real data stored in here. All right, that's the new data generator. Next, we made a number of improvements to the developer experience, making developing with Apex a little bit better, a little bit easier. Starting with an easier way for you to add application icons to your application. So if you build an application in the Create App Wizard, you always had, or for some time, you had the ability to pick an icon out of our gallery of icons. Now there's an easier way for you to actually upload your own icons and make these icons be scaled at different sizes, which is particularly useful for PWAs. I'm going to show you that in a moment. There's also a new Create Page Wizard. So we actually redesigned and redeveloped all our Create Page Wizards. We made them a lot simpler. There are fewer steps. In most cases, you just pick a page type, and then on the next page, you pick your data source, your breadcrumb, and your navigation. And again, in most cases, that's it. And you go off and create your page. In some cases, you have to provide a little bit more information, like which columns to include and which columns to include in the chart or cards, for example. So a lot more simplified, the different components, as well as our features and legacy pages. I'm going to show you this as well. And then we have a new export format that allows you to export your applications into JSON and YAML. For now, this is just going to be an export. There's no corresponding import just yet. That is coming in the future. But the use case and the purpose of this feature is to allow you to do easier diffing, right? It's a readable format, like you see in my example down here. If you make a change to, say, the HTML code, hello world 1, 2, 3, you can more easily compare these side by side. And then we also improved or actually added a new gallery. We used to have a gallery of packaged applications for a number of releases, and we shipped all our sample applications and productivity applications with Apex. A few releases ago, we moved all of these apps to GitHub to be able to more frequently update them outside our Apex release schedule. And yeah, just to keep them modern and fresh there all the time. You had to go there though to download them as a zip file, download them to your PC, to your Mac, and upload them back into Apex and install them. So it was always a little bit cumbersome. So what we've done in 22.1, we added a new gallery, modernized, redesigned gallery. And you can install these applications directly from within the Apex UI. And what's happening under the hood is that Apex makes the call out to GitHub for you, downloads the application, and then proceeds installing it. So let's show you how that all looks like. Going back to the application builder. Close too many tabs here. Starting with the gallery, you click on the gallery up here, and there is the list of sample apps and starter applications. And when you go to our GitHub repository, you'll find the same list there. Checking in the 22.1 branch, you'll find these applications in here. You can still download them from here and import them. But of course, it's a lot easier if you do this straight from within the UI. So just to show you how that works, you go find the application that you want to install. For example, the universal theme reference application is always very useful. So I can read up more about it, right? Direct linking to GitHub, or I can just go ahead and install it. When I'm installing a packaged application, there are some advanced settings like whether I want to have a new application ID or change the application ID, and what my parsing schema is supposed to be. I'm going to install application, and now Apex is actually calling out to GitHub, loading the application, and then it's proceeding with installing it into my workspace here. So there you go. There's my app, and I can just go ahead and run this. All right, so there's the universal theme sample application. Hopefully you're all aware, know of this URL, apexorg.com/ut, the same application, only that I now have this installed locally. And you can use this to learn all about the universal theme, as well as how to migrate from older themes to the universal theme. All right, so that's the gallery. Again, all the sample apps and starter apps that we have on GitHub are available here. We will add additional apps over time. And you can also configure your own link to your own gallery. So if you want to host your own set of apps, you can point this to your own gallery and have them show up here as well. All right, so that's the gallery. The next I wanted to kind of show you a little bit about the new wizards and the new application icons. So I'm going to actually start with just an empty application. And I'm going to call this NYC 311. I'll show you in a moment what I mean by that. And now there's a button here where I can either pick one of our existing icons, or I can just pick an item from my list here. There you go. That looks nice. I can move it a little bit in the middle. There you go. Save icon. And now I have a new icon for this application. And I also would like to enable this application for mobile use. So I'm just going to check this install progressive web app here. All right, so that should do it for now. I'm going to create application. There you go. So there's my app. When I run this application, I get the new logo here. I can log in. And there's nothing else in here thus far, but I do also see my icon here and up here. Now, when I install this application, I'm going to talk more about PWA a little bit later on, but you'll see this install app button over here. When you click this, it actually gets installed on your Mac, or if I'm doing this on my mobile phone, on my Android or iPhone device. Right, but let's take a look at some other enhancements first. And I wanted to talk about the Create Page Wizard. Just to set up this example here a little bit, I do have some data that I want to visualize. And this data, it looks like this. So I would like to, not this. I would like to visualize some data in a REST API. There's this list of New York City 3-on-1 service requests. That's when you call up the city to complain about noise or garbage or rats or anything. That's what goes into this 3-on-1 database. And there's a lengthy list of complaints to the city. And I want to create a report in Apex, or better faceted search on this data, and maybe also visualize this as a map. And I kind of did a little bit of a shortcut here. Typically, you would create a REST data source, which I've already done in this demo application. Going to shared components, REST data sources. So I pointed this to the REST endpoint of this data source. In addition to that, I also synchronized that data. There's a new menu entry here in shared components called REST synchronization. That feature was there before. It was just kind of hidden here under REST data sources, and here on the right-hand side, manage synchronization. So now it's a little bit easier to find. And what that does, it actually takes this REST API and allows you to synchronize it into a local table. So I created a local table called NYC 3-on-1. And prior to this webinar, I synchronized all that data just to make my demo here a little bit faster. And also because this data only gets updated once a day. So there's really no point in doing a report on live data. It's much easier to just synchronize this data using the schedule on a daily basis. Like going back to the application that I created here, NYC 3-on-1, going to the new Create Page Wizard, you can create all these components. We have nice new icons, calendar, cards, chart, dashboard. You can also click here on feature and create these features that we have in the Create application wizard, an about page, access control page, maybe some activity reporting. And then there's also a link to our legacy pages. What I want to create is a faceted search page on this data, and let's see, it's 3-on-1. And I could point it to my REST data source now, but because I have this synchronized table, I can just point it there. And then down here, navigation, I can make all my choices about backgrounds. Navigation, do I want to have a new navigation entry? And do I want to have an icon? This is also new. You can now actually pick out of our icon gallery, and that's going to be the icon that shows up in your navigation menu. But that looks good. Going to the next step. And what I want to create is a cards report. And I just want to have the facets be based on things like status, borrow, descriptor, agency name, and complaint type. And again, this is cards. And because cards needs a little bit more information, there's a third step here. So I can pick my title column, which is going to be descriptor. My body column, I'm going to show, let's say, the complaint type, if I can find it here. Initials, I'm going to go with descriptor again. And then my batch column is going to be the borrow. All right, so that looks good. Create page. And I'm in the page designer now. So this was the new Create Page Wizard. And when you look at the page, this is what it looks like. It's a cards-based report. And it has all these facets here on the left that allow me to narrow down the results. I do want to talk about what's new in faceted search here in a moment, but this was just to kind of give you a little bit of an introduction to the new Create Page Wizard. Before I get into faceted search, I mentioned our new readable export format. So let's take a look at that first. So this is a pretty basic application, few pages, faceted search, home page, and login page. So I'm going to export this application now. I'm going to export this into my downloads folder. Let me just set this up here. Sorry, one moment. So there's my downloads folder. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to export the application. I do want to have it split into multiple files. And then down here, you'll find the export readable format that you can choose between the YAML and JSON. YAML is a little bit more readable, especially if you have code in there. If you have like some JavaScript code or SQL or pure SQL code, it's more readable to actually have your code shown over multiple lines. JSON just sticks it all into one line with \n for line breaks. But let's go with JSON. I'm going to export this. It's going to go into my download folder. There you go. This is what it looks like. And now I can unzip that. And then you'll find in here the normal application export split into SQL scripts for each page and each shared component. But you also find a similar hierarchy in a readable format in JSON format. So there are my pages and my shared components in JSON format. Now let me show you what that looks like in like this. So this is a Visual Studio Code. You can use any editor really. There's my zip file and there's the application that I just downloaded. And when you look at readable, look at pages, there's my home page. And this is my home page in JSON format. So there's my appearance, my navigation menu. Then down here I have like my region with my title and so on, right? So now what happens if I make a change? Go into my home page. And I'm just going to change this to demo. Now I'm going to export this again. This is still enabled for JSON format. Exporting it again. Now it's going to sit side by side with my other download. I'm going to extract this. And there's my second folder. Now going back to my editor, I can choose this one here for comparison. And then also go into my new one over here and compare it to this page. There you go. Now I have these two files side by side. And for the most part, this page definition is identical. The only difference is the title, NYC 311, and here my demo. So this is how you can export your application in JSON or YAML format. And you can use that to diff your applications. It's a lot more readable. It's a lot easier to identify what has changed and to kind of check it into the source control system. But again, for installations, you still need the SQL scripts, right? So there's our classic SQL script for page one. You still need that if you want to import the application. In the future, we plan to have these new export formats also be available for imports. All right, so back to my slides here. New updated components, go back into presentation mode. Faceted search enhancements, so that's what I want to talk about next. Well, I guess for a number of releases now, we've improved our faceted search every time. This time we added a new action menu, those little dots here, and we put in things like filter and charts for a bit of a cleaner UI. We also added highlighting. So when you're searching for something, filtering within your facets, your search terms are being highlighted. And it is now possible to develop your own plugins, making use of faceted search and smart filters. We introduced smart filters in the previous release. They work very similar to faceted search. They have a different UI. They have like these search bars on the top and pills, but essentially they work similar to faceted search. So both faceted search and smart filters now work with your own region plugins. So if you want to do your own reporting region or your own charting region, you can do that now with a region plugin and hook them up with faceted search. We also introduced a new region order by item. In this graphic here, I show you like an order by task name. That's useful for report regions that don't have any sorting built in, right? Like a cards report doesn't have any column heading sorting. But you can also use it, for example, with classic reports. You can just turn off the built-in column heading sorting and then use this new order by item. And the nice thing about this item, it kind of all works automatically. You just enable it in your report region, and it automatically creates that item for you. It creates all the AJAX requests and submissions that you need. The page item to submit is included, and you can define your order by clause on one or several columns. There's also tokenized search. So when you search in your faceted report or in other places in Apex, in the past you would always search on the whole string. When you looked for things like red shoes, you would only find red shoes, that whole string. Now we actually tokenize your search. It's a little bit more, I guess you could call it natural search. It works a lot more like, I guess, what you're used to in Google. So when you look for red shoes, it looks for red and for shoes. And if you want to have expressions like UI designer, you enclose it in double quotes. And if your expression actually has quotes in there, like the sky is quote, blue quote, and nice, you can double encode it. So a number of different ways to do a better and easier search. And then there's also changes to our Markdown editor. So Markdown is, I guess, a simplified markup language that you can use to do text formatting like headings, inline code, bold text, italic text, and so on. So it's a way for you to define formatted text in a, I guess, essentially safer way, right? If you format your rich text using HTML, then you always run a risk of breaking your overall page HTML, or worse, injecting some JavaScript and cross-site scripting. So Markdown is a safer way, more secure way to have rich text. And we've had several enhancements in this release. We uptook CK Editor 5 version 32, and we made Markdown available with interactive reports and init requests. And there's also improved region images support. So if you want to include some of your own images in your applications, you were always able to upload an image and then write your own HTML. But it's always a little bit tricky getting the right and valid HTML in there. So with this new region template, you can now just simply reference an image file, either in your static images or externally, and have it be shown in your region. And there are a number of template options available for you to scale the image, filter the image, apply some sepia colors, black and white colors, and so on. And then we added the JavaScript initialization code attribute to more components like faceted search, smart filters, and the card regions. If you are customizing your components with JavaScript, then this is an easier way for you to kind of tap in there and hook these customizations into the appropriate regions during initialization of these components. All right, let's look at some of these features that I just talked about. Going back to my application here. So I mentioned the faceted search changes. So what you see here are these three dots, the menu. And I can just simply display chart and then look at the service requests by borough. So in Brooklyn, I had 2,730. In Manhattan, I had 2,276. I downloaded a total of 10,000 rows. So that's where these numbers are coming from. And now as I'm making selections here, you'll see how the chart updates, right? I'll look at just all the open service requests. And maybe I'm interested in just noise requests, noise complaints. You'll see how the borrow numbers change here quite a bit. So the charts are now in this actions menu. You can also use this action menu to filter, right? Instead of having like this filter text field, you can just go here and filter. And then, for example, search for noise. And as I'm searching for noise, you'll see the results show up in this list. I can show them all. And let's say I look for water. Then here are all the complaints that match water. Heat, hot water, water leak, water system, and so on. So either way for you to filter your results within this action menu. And then at the very top of this list, you'll see the new sort by order by item. So I can again go in here and search by complaint type, or order by complaint type, or order by borrow. So now where's that coming from? When you look at Page Designer, look at your search results definition. This is a cards report. And down here is the order by section that you can choose to have this be based on item, static value, or none. And if you pick an item, and if that wasn't there before, then Apex automatically creates that order by item for you. And then with this button here, you can define all your different order by clauses. So if you want to sort by borrower, say ascending, you can simply add this in here and call this borrower descending. Hit OK, hit save, run your page again. And here's my new search sort. So that's the new sort by item. Now, another nice thing, and that's not necessarily new, but it kind of illustrates those new faceted search features. I can actually take this region here and change it from cards to maps. If I change it to map, I need to define a layer. And that's my Theorem 1 request. And then I need to pick a data source, and that's my region source. And then I need to provide longitude and latitude or other geolocation data. And let's go here with longitude, sorry, up here, and latitude. And then when I reload this, I now get all my data shown on the map. And then I'll go ahead and change things like the borrow. I can narrow down my results to just the borrows that I'm interested in. All right, so this is some of the new components. Just to recap, we looked at faceted search enhancements, the new sort items, region order by item. We looked at the tokenized search. Well, we didn't actually look at that. Sorry, I forgot all about it. So let's do that. When I look for things like noise and, well, water and quality, I would find that, but that's really a bad example. Let's go back, let's clear it all out. Let's just use this one here, that's easy enough. Filter, I just want to use city. Let's go with York and police. Great demo, why isn't it working? All right, sorry for that demo. That should normally get me all the hits. I'll take a look at that later. All right, we talked about Markdown, image support, and JavaScript initialization. And then lastly, I want to talk about PWA and mobile. PWA have been around for, I guess, 2 releases now. And with each release, we enhance our PWA features. So I initially showed you how I had this install button. So when I actually install this on my Mac here, then this becomes application gets its own application window. It actually also shows up here in my menu down here. So just like you would find it on your iPhone, you kind of get like a little menu entry, and you can launch it right from here and have it run as if it were a real application or a native Mac application. I do have this simulator here. So if you want to see what this looks like on your iPhone, run this again. Well, I have it here. I'm just going to grab this URL. And I'm going to open it up in my iPhone. Put in the URL. And one thing to note here is the Remember Me. And the Remember Me is part of our persistent authentication feature. So with Apex 22.1, you can now remember your sign-in for a certain amount of time, 30 days by default. So when I'm coming back here next time, I don't have to log in again. I'm going to sign in. And there you are. There's my application. I can look at my map here. And I look at my facets. I can also install it on my device. On Android, it would install right from this wizard. On the iPhone, you open this button, you add it to your home screen. And then it actually shows up here. And as you can see, I did a previous demo, same icon. But there's my new application. I can just click on it, and it looks and behaves as a native app now. It still needs connection to the server, right? Like all the data I'm pulling in from my database, but it is installed on your Mac. It downloaded a number of things like your JavaScript and CSS files. So it caches a number of things locally, and it's easier to find. And with persistent authentication, it's also easier for you to not have to sign in every time. All right, so there is the persistent authentication. So this allows you to sign in once and then stay signed in. You see Remember Me on your login screen as opposed to Remember Username. And of course, we also made this configurable. So if you don't want to allow this kind of feature on your instance, you can go to Instance Administration and turn this off. We enabled this on apexoracle.com. If you want to give it a try, you can go to your workspace, create your PWA applications, and take this for a spin. And we also allow you to customize the PWA service workers now. A PWA service worker is a JavaScript file that is defined in bars by default and downloaded into your PWA when you install it. And in Apex 21.2, there was a default service worker, which is still there. But if you want to make customizations, for example, to do push notifications or payments or background app updates and so on, you can now configure your own service worker. And just to show you a few things here, going to my application attributes, there's now a new user interface tab where you define your image, right? I uploaded this image in the beginning. It actually got scaled into all these different sizes. And I can just go simply in here and upload this different icon or pick one of these. Or I can also do that at runtime. When I customize my application, edit app icon, I can edit it at runtime. And then there's another new tab here, Progressive Web App, that allows you to enable PWAs, make them installable, set some appearance attributes, and then down here, service worker configuration, that allows you to either go with the default, pick an external for service worker, or configure the different hooks. So if you have just specific things you want to do on fetch or sync, you can put your own service worker snippet in here. And for each one of these, we have some sample code that tells you what to do. But all of these things will be covered in a lot more detail in our upcoming office hours. So then to finish up, just a few additional features. Workspace files are now included in your component export. We have subscription support for lists. We had lists for such a long time. It's odd that we never added that, but it's very useful if you're building applications that are comprised of multiple apps, right? If you kind of use build an app that has like 3 or 4 applications that are basically modules of your app, it's much more easier to, for example, have your navigation list be subscribed across. When you look at Apex, we are doing the same thing, right? The application builder is app 4000. SQL Workshop is app 4400. Team development is app 4600. And all of these have these navigation lists. So now you can synchronize and subscribe them across all these different apps. There are enhancements to the code editor. There's also changes to REST-enabled SQL that Carsten will cover in a lot more detail in, I think, 2 weeks. And there's also session overrides. So if you're doing a lot of work with files and other attributes, you can now have some overrides in your application toolbar down here. And we'll cover that in upcoming office hours as well. And then lastly, JavaScript library upgrades. That always kind of falls through the cracks, but it's one of our main, I guess, contributions with each release, that we keep all these libraries upgraded. It's not particularly sexy or interesting, but it's important to keep these JavaScript libraries, open source libraries, up to date. Many of these libraries over time have CVE, security vulnerabilities, filed in the public. CKEditor 4 in particular frequently has CVEs filed. So it's important to always have the latest versions of these JavaScript libraries. And if you're just writing JavaScript manually, it's probably very hard to always kind of go back every couple of months or weeks and kind of upgrade those libraries that you're depending on. So this is the work that we are doing for you. With each release, we're upgrading these libraries. We're testing that these libraries work with all our components. So when you install a new version of Apex, you kind of get all of these libraries upgraded for you, and you're always on the latest versions. And with that, I just wanted to see if there are any questions that I can answer. Any questions from the chat that we want to discuss here?
Hi, Mark. There's a few questions here. There's one question from Gul Rahman. Is there any option to copy multiple pages from one application to another?
No, there's copy page wizard, but that's one at a time.
Okay. Let's see if there's any other questions in here. With the region sort by item, are there ways to sort this ascending or descending, or is that something that needs to be defined manually?
It is like, that's what I was just showing. By default, I had like the borrow, I think, sorted ascending. I added a second option in there for descending sort. So what you do is you edit the sort item and you add the columns that you want to sort on, and you choose whether it's ascending or descending. And if you want to have both, then there are going to be 2 entries in that drop-down list.
Got it. Okay. One more question here. Is it possible to set the order by page item or column in a new calendar? Not sure if I understand this correctly. When we have many items for one day, so maybe sorting the items in the calendar. But does it work with calendars?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay.
I think it's a question for Patrick or Carsten, so we'll get back to you on that.
Yep. Let's see if there's any other questions here. Is there a way to export all of the pages in a page group only?
I think well, yeah, no, not really. But I think the component export kind of lets you kind of collect a number of things that you want to export, but there's no way where you kind of just pick a group and run an export as such. But you can go to the component export and page export and download, I guess, a shopping cart full of components of your application.
Yeah. All right. I guess one more thing with the component export too is now it includes your workspace images as well. So you can now get that as part of your component export.
Excellent.
All right. I'll just see if there's any other questions. I know we're like 1 minute over.
Well, I'm sure there will be more questions coming in our detailed walkthroughs in the next couple of weeks. So please join us again next week, the week after, and the following 2 weeks. And you can always watch the recordings as well. But yeah, that's the place to ask detailed questions about all these new features.
Absolutely. So next
try them out. apexorg.com has been updated, so try them out and then kind of collect your questions for upcoming office hours.
And please do check out that What's New page. There's all the videos on there, all the content. So you can take a look at it, and we'll have 4 more office hours for you. So thanks, everybody.
All right.
Have a good day.
Thank you.